2020 Democratic presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard announced a new exclusive video series on X with Elon Musk to defend free speech. Let's watch.
Free speech is something that a lot of us have taken for granted throughout our lives. It is fundamental to our rights that we have as Americans. Unfortunately, we live in a time where free speech is under attack. Lifting up your voice in dissent or challenge or questioning or even having a dialogue and debate is not only discouraged, it can be cause for retaliation or cancellation or censorship. We must defend our right to free speech by using it. I'm excited to announce today a partnership with X, a platform that under the leadership of Elon Musk not only defends free speech, it is celebrated and encouraged. So I'm looking forward to launching some new projects with them where I'll tell the stories and tell the truth about what's happening here in our country and around the world, the truth that most often those in power don't want us to hear.
But is X really a bastion of free speech? In response to the announcement, recently ousted MSNBC journalist Mehdi Hasan wrote, "Hilarious that she's announcing this on the exact same day that a bunch of left-wing journalists, remember the left, which she used to pretend to be a part of, were just suddenly suspended without any explanation or due process by Twitter." A ban wave yesterday allegedly hit a number of prominent left-wing journalists and other accounts, according to X News. There's been no explanation given. Investigative journalist Ken Klippenstein wrote on X, "As a journalist, I've been matrix dodging layoffs my entire career. Elon isn't even on the top 10 of threats to my survival. Had the ban stuck, and I imagine it will eventually, I would have just migrated to my newsletter."
Eyebrows were raised as anti-Israel commentator Jackson Hinkle tweeted, "Why are accounts critical of Israel being suspended, Elon Musk?" To which Musk responded directly saying, "I will investigate. Obviously, it is okay to be critical of anything. It's just not okay to call for extreme violence, as that is illegal, apart from the UN exemption, where officials from countries recognized by the UN can say what they say at the UN. For the record, I do not personally agree with your views. Nonetheless, the point of freedom of speech is allowing those views you disagree with to express those views." Journalist at the Texas Observer Stephen Monticelli tweeted, "It appears that the reason I was unbanned is that Elon Musk responded to a post by Jackson Hinkle, a far-right influencer who regularly posts misinformation and conspiracy theories. This website is absolutely cooked."
Now, senior staff writer at Mint Press News, Alan Macleod, joins us now to discuss. Welcome, Alan.
It's great to be back with you.
Now, you were among the banned. Can you let us know if there were any insights from your personal experience that can help us understand how this happened and why?
You know, honestly, even after the fact, I'm none the wiser of what happened. I was going to bed, and then suddenly I got some texts and calls telling me that my Twitter account appeared to have been suspended. I went on there and checked, and sure enough, I did have a direct message from the Twitter support team saying that my account had been suspended. They gave no reason. They did tell me, however, to look in my inbox. And when I went to my email inbox, there was nothing there whatsoever. So I was absolutely in the dark as much as anyone else was. However, as you said, there were a whole load of prominent left-wing, anti-war, anti-establishment figures who seem to have got caught up in this dragnet at the same time. So that really suggests that this was a political decision. As you heard, Elon Musk personally intervened in this, and recently I received a message from support@x.com. It was equally blasé and content-free. All it said was, "Hello, we are writing to you to let you know that we've unsuspended your account. We're sorry for any inconvenience and hope to see you back on X soon. Thanks, X support." And so really, quite frankly, when we look at this, we're none the wiser of what happened. However, in this milieu that we're in, where people critical of the establishment seem to be deranked, demoted, delisted, and sometimes even deleted, many of us have been worrying about our accounts for a very long time, especially because nowadays social media is the real lifeblood of journalism. It's how we contact readers. It's how we try and build a base. And so if we do get zapped off of these huge platforms, that's an enormous threat to free speech all around the world, because this is not just a US problem, but it's a global one.
So Elon obviously interfering here to bring back the accounts suggests to me that he was not aware of them being taken down in the first place, conceding this, violates his ethos for the social media site. He has made these lofty commitments to free speech. Do you have any theory or idea that perhaps your account and all these accounts were flagged? There was reports made by someone who probably has a political disagreement with all of you fine folks, and maybe that was heeded without a second thought. Do you have any speculation you can give us on what really took place?
Well, if you want me to wildly speculate, I did write an article a couple of years ago called "The Federal Bureau of Tweets. Twitter is hiring an alarming number of FBI agents." And what I did there was I went through the LinkedIn profiles of many of the senior Twitter staff, specifically the ones that were involved in content moderation and trust and safety. Now, to be fair to Mr. Musk, this was before his time, before he bought the platform. But what I found was that there were literally dozens of former FBI agents who had been plucked from the Bureau or other three-letter organizations in DC, like the NSA or the CIA, and had been parachuted in to the top echelons of Twitter, where they were actually influencing what everybody in the world sees, and crucially what they don't see online day after day. And so, of course, when you have people like that, those sorts of high state officials being dropped into important media outlets like Twitter, they are going to see the world in a very black and white way. And so people who are critical of the US government, the Western establishment, the war, the military-industrial complex, the corporate state that we live in right now, are obviously going to be treated with suspicion, if not outright hostility. And so I think generally people like me, Ken Klippenstein, Rob Rousseau, and many of the people who were banned really are walking on this sort of political third rail where we're not really sure where the boundaries are of what we can say, and at any time we can get zapped off without any mention. And it was only thanks to the fact that so many people kicked up such a big stink about this that Elon Musk himself heard about this and that we were reinstated.
Right, and all of those former federal agents or people who had whom federal agents had easy access to at Twitter was a huge problem that obviously we've talked about in the context of the Twitter files and all of those disclosures. Elon taking over Twitter was supposed to be, I think he articulated that he wanted to address a lot of those problems. Obviously, there were mass firings at the company. Some of us hoped that was involving many of the people who had made questionable moderation decisions. So what does this say to you about the state of free speech on the platform at a time where people like Tulsi Gabbard and even Don Lemon, we reported on yesterday, joining to launch their own shows on what they describe as the #1 free speech platform in the world?
I'm honestly not convinced that so much has changed. I think when we look at what Musk has brought to Twitter, there's a lot of change, but there's also a lot of continuity as well. And ultimately, Twitter was already controlled by billionaires before Musk, and it now is controlled by Musk again. And although he's talked a very good game about free speech, when you look at a lot of the decisions he's made in terms of advertising, we can see that free speech isn't his primary goal. I'm thinking, of course, about how he complied with requests from the Turkish government or the Indian government to censor critics of those particular regimes, which goes completely against his free speech ethos. And so ultimately, for Musk, I think a lot of the time the bottom line is the profit and loss margin. And he's got all sorts of problems trying to make Twitter not only profitable, but even just breaking even. And so annoying advertisers or annoying big governments is obviously going to happen quite often. And if that clashes against free speech, I think we've seen that Musk might look at his pocketbook before he really thinks about his ideals, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a good point. And not to mention another example there, that after he returned from his trip to visit Israel, he posted on Twitter that there was this new policy. He said, as I said earlier this week, decolonization and from the river to the sea and similar euphemisms necessarily imply genocide, he said, and that clear calls for extreme violence are against our terms of service and will result in suspension. With that in mind, it is not surprising surprising that so many advocates for the rights of Palestinians and people who have been critical of Israel, it's been accused of conducting a genocide in the region, are the ones that have gotten suspended. One last question. I just wanted to know what you made of the Squirrel account, one of the suspended accounts, accusing Bill Ackman as being the reason why these suspensions happened. Bill Ackman, of course, being a multi-billionaire hedge fund manager who has been pushing the ouster of Claudine Gay and who is currently defending his own wife against numerous and pretty serious plagiarism accusations.
It's difficult to say, Bill Ackman is a very powerful man and he is in some extremely hot water. He's made himself look like a complete fool, quite frankly, attacking Gay, but when his own partner is involved in similar plagiarism accusations, I should say. One thing I would say is I have never tweeted about Bill Ackman, so I'm not really sure why I'd be on the list. But I'm sure that, quite frankly, a lot of people at Twitter senior management don't like me because I have written quite a lot of negative articles about Twitter in the past. Ultimately, though, this really shows one of the main problems with our media right now, and that is the fact that billionaires control it. When you look at the biggest outlets in the US, they're all controlled by oligarchs, whether it's Jeff Bezos, who owns Twitch and the Washington Post, or we're talking about Twitter with Elon Musk, or the huge amounts of media that people like Bill Gates and other super wealthy billionaires in the US either own or control. This is a gigantic problem for us because when we live in a society that's dominated by the ultra wealthy, we need to have a media that is capable of looking at these individuals and these structures, critiquing them and challenging them. And if that's not possible, even on places like social media, which are supposed to be an antidote to the tired old system of corporate media, then we are in massive trouble, Brianna.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure's been mine.